Hey, how do you love your enemies? This is my third video because I'm not perfect and I make mistakes and I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to cause stumbling blocks. I don't want to I don't want to hurt people's feelings. Um, and I managed to do it. I managed to, because I'm not perfect and no human is, I managed to say things and do things which can be stumbling blocks and which can cause people's feelings to get hurt. And, I apologize for that. I'm a human. I'm not perfect. And I apologize for it. Like, I'm not beating myself up over it. Um, but I apologize for being a stumbling block for people. And I apologize for having done those things to people, having hurt people's feelings and having been a stumbling block. And I try not to do that now. So, all right, I'll try. Third attempt. Whoop, whoop. Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. I had resentment. Now, I don't feel resentment towards Jordan Peterson anymore. And it's because I've come to grips with that a bunch of things, all kinds of things. I'm not perfect, and I've created stumbling blocks, and I've hurt people's feelings. And what do you know? Jordan Peterson's not perfect either. No one is. And I could go around pointing at people's mistakes. I could point out, all kinds of people's mistakes, and whether or not depending on how you perceive those people, you'll either say, yeah, or you'll say no. But Jordan Peterson, if I still man Jordan Peterson, he's an imperfect person who is trying to help as many people as possible. And he will hurt people's feelings, and he will create stumbling blocks. Right? And so I like to think about my children. My children go through developmental stages. And so my children eventually started learning how to walk. And so I imagine Jordan Peterson being like a parent figure trying to help people in a spiritual walk, like a walk with God, where we don't allow God to just carry us, because God carries everything. But we also say, hey, I'll take some responsibility. I'll carry something. So once my kids started standing up and they would fall down and they'd learn how to walk. Yeah. There's mistakes being made. And even parents trying to help their children learn to walk are going to make mistakes as well. What's the best move as a parent? Well, my approach, and I'm not perfect, is that I just try to avoid the child having permanent damage. And I'm not perfect, so I might actually make mistakes. And so I think we all have some permanent damage, including Jordan Peterson, including myself. And we can try to get better at carrying our weight, and dancing and playing and working with God with a balanced approach, learning a balance so we don't tip over and fall down. So, I think, Jordan's done some good work. And then the next book after Jordan Peterson, when I was reading, I got up to Rule 5. And what's funny is I had a dream about Rule 5, and I didn't even know it was Rule 5 when I had the dream. But Rule 5 is, do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. And I woke woke up with that dream because I disagree. I disagree. But I've got up to Rule 5, and then I realized that Jordan Peterson is trying to help these children to stand up and take their first steps on a spiritual journey. Let me mute this thing. Boom. And I was like, I want, me, my brokenness, my permanent damage is that I tend to think that I'm a top lobster. So Jordan Peterson's trying to get people to stand up straight with their shoulders back. And here I am, I'm like, I'm a gifted top lobster. Here's my damage, I'm coming to grips with the fact that that's part of my damage, my permanent damage. And I'm like, well, where's the book for us? Where's the book for the top lobsters? And sure enough, I receive a phone call from a friend, and he had went to get his hair cut by his cousin, and his cousin had mentioned a book. And I was like, I went and wrote it down, and I'm going to meet my friend this weekend. And so I was like, I'll check this book out. A.W. Tozer, The Crucified Life. And so I've gotten halfway through Tozer's book. So I put aside Jordan Peterson, and now I'm at Tozer's book. And yeah, I think Tozer, if Jordan Peterson is helping you stand up straight and start taking some steps, carrying a load instead of just having God carry the load, carry you can carry some load too. You can help, because that is meaningful, to carry something, and with God, to carry some amount of load. That's kind of meaningful. Like, it's almost like we were created to do that, because we actually become satisfied when we learn to do that, and as we learn to do that more so. Now Tozer, I think, well, there's all my thoughts, and I'm not perfect, but there is a Christian path, and I'm not necessarily on the Christian path, but the Christian path seems to be, I'm surrounded by Christians. So Jordan Peterson might introduce you to Christianity, for example, but maybe he introduces you to Judaism, or the Noahide laws, or Islam, maybe shamanism. And so you get introduced to different paths, but one of these popular paths which seem relevant is Christianity. And Tozer, I think, seems like a good read for the Christians. Tozer, and so yeah, these different paths have like bad form and good form. And there's degrees of form, right? But like the worst kind of Christian, right? So there's the best kind of Christian, and there's the worst kind of Christian, and everything in between. And Tozer is trying to encourage you to be the best kind of Christian. And so the worst kind of Christian is the Christian who gets baptized and has been saved and goes to church to receive service, to be serviced. I've heard it said by one of the people I'm connected to, probably one of these Christians I'm connected to on the internet. And that's the worst kind of Christianity. The best kind of Christianity is the kind where you are attempting to go through a theosis, transfiguration, to become more like Christ, which means, in my language, to walk with God, to dance with God, to play with God, to work with God. That's where the best form of Christianity is doing that inside the mind, which you can see in the fruits of the people. That's the best kind of Christianity, is the kind which is transfiguring the Christian to be of service instead of to be serviced. And, this is just kind of I'm not a Christian. Well, It's debatable, but I'm different than Tozer. I'm different than Tozer. I'm different than, like, the best kind of Christian. I'm different than them, and the best kind of Jew. I'm different than them, and the best kind of Muslim. I'm different than them. I'm just kind of my own breed. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful to you Christians, dear Christians. So Jordan Peterson is kind of an introduction, helping you stand up straight, and I think it's relevant for most people, most Christians. Jordan Peterson, like, I suspect that the majority of Christians have not even learned how to begin taking the first step, like that baptism. Like, I don't think that's the first step. What is it? I mean, I did a baptism to myself, and it was a strange one. It was unorthodox, and I didn't do it the way that a Christian would do it. But is that the first step? It might be. Like, I've been experiencing something like transfiguration and theosis, and what was happening before I baptized myself and what happened after. I'm tempted to think that the transfiguration and theosis was happening before the baptism, is what I'm thinking. And then my baptism was more like, hey, Jesus, I want you to know that if you're willing to help, I'll take it. So that was my baptism. So I don't think that baptism is the first step. I think the first step is that it's basically seeking a relationship with God, the creator of everything. That's the first step. Now, yeah, for me, that first step was like a rejection of an idea of God, because in my mind, I had believed that God was some human sitting on a throne in the clouds. He had a right hand and a left hand, and maybe this Jesus character was in a smaller throne, and that was what was in my mind. And so I had to get rid of that and say, God, I'm ready to meet you if you're there. If you're real, if you're there, I'm ready to meet you. And yeah, that's the first step. And it turns out that's it. Because I could go a year and then I'd remember, oh, I did meet God, and then I forgot about God. Somehow became distracted. And so this process of theosis for me, or transfiguration, has been this process of trying to remember God, trying to remember to seek God at every moment. And so the first step is the first time you ever do that. And the second step is the second time you ever do that. And you've got all these in-betweens where I call it idolatry, where you forget God. And so there's this let's just say that I'm going up, and I seek God, and I meet God, and then I fall. And that's idolatry, because I forget God's totally out of my mind. And it can be years. And then I remember, oh yeah, what about God? And then I go up, so I start seeking God, and I meet God. And that happens years and years, and eventually it gets to the point where I go to sleep. And did I remember God before I went to sleep? And did I remember God when I woke up in the morning? And so maybe I'm starting to get better at seeking God at night before I go to sleep. And I'm still not great at it, guys. I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress, man. And I seek God in the mornings when I wake up. And then what happens throughout the day? The Muslims have a call to prayer 5 times a day. That's good. If you seek God 5 times a day, man, nice. There's people who have never once in their life ever went seeking God. So good on you. Every day, 5 times a day, great. And then, my hope would be that it's just seeking God every single second of the day. That's what I'm aiming for. And I'm failing. Well, am I failing right now? I don't think so. Did I fail in the previous video? Yes. And I failed in the one before that. And man, I'm permanently damaged. I am not perfect. And so, but yeah, maybe this one is one that's helpful. There's less stumbling blocks in this recording than the last two. Yeah, that's my prayer. It's my hope. And less stumbling blocks, didn't hurt people's feelings. Maybe it'll help some of you. So I don't even know what you call it. It's a what you call it. What you call it? All right. Hey, first step is this. It's every single step.